What this is, really, is the story of an incredible journey into consciousness. We gave a remote viewer a blind target. It could have been anything. The viewer had no hint, no clue. Turns out it was the super collider and the moment when they touched off the God particle. We see the viewer describe the physical location, and if you look at her drawings, you'll believe she was there. But without ever physically being there, she's able to see the people who did the experiment. Not only that, she describes the subatomic reactions. And we were able to document the whole thing. This is not just the best remote viewing session you've ever seen. Watching this will give you new appreciation about the potential of remote viewing, and it'll give you a tantalizing insight into the possible connection between matter, energy, and consciousness.
What is the origin of our physical universe? How did matter come into being? Does the universe have a consciousness? Science has been on a quest to answer fundamental questions about the nature of the universe. One of the tools in this quest is the Large Hadron Collider, a massive super collider at the CERN facility in Switzerland. In the summer of 2012, physicists conducted experiments attempting to create and identify the Higgs Boson particle. They feel this is a key to explaining how energy can achieve mass, which in turn is fundamental to understanding our physical universe. In July 2012, scientists believe they captured this elusive prize, the so-called God particle. That same summer, a Japanese woman named Hitomi Akamatsu traveled to Hawaii to study remote viewing. In the course of her work, she was given a blind tasking that turned out to be one of the most amazing remote viewing sessions ever published.
There are times when remote viewers achieve what we call moments of clarity, and this was the case here. I tasked this target. I ran the project. I watched her take this blind cue into a room alone and work for hours and hours, and I watched her come out with this session. It blew my mind.
Unless you're in the guild, you've never seen anything like this. Unless you've done the years, done the time, done the targets, unless you've been in the guild, you've never seen the quality of work that you're going to see in this target.
Remote viewing was developed by the U.S. military. A number of top-secret programs showed that humans have the ability to perceive things across space and time. It's akin to what many refer to as telepathy, or ESP, or psychic awareness. But researchers discovered it is actually a natural communication skill, nothing magic or extrasensory.
Remote viewing would be the ability through mental means to acquire information that is both distant from you in space and time. It's more than anything else a function of mind.
Given that consciousness exists, the next thing is that consciousness is a digital information system. Okay? Consciousness is a digital information system, and as such, it runs on just information. Our awareness is just information. When you observe something, your reality, all of our realities are just information. Information comes through our eyes, comes through our ears, through our senses, and that information then is interpreted by us in the brain.
A part of you, your subconscious awareness, exists in and is connected to a greater field of non-local consciousness where literally everything resonates. Remote viewing teaches you to communicate with your subconscious and perceive locations, objects, events, and people across time and space. These techniques were declassified and brought out of the military and into the civilian world. We now know it is a trainable skill that normal people can learn.
こんにちは、赤松ひとみと申します。現在私はハワイのリモートビューイングのギルドで
Hitomi Akamatsu is a practicing psychotherapist in Japan, a PhD research scholar with degrees in psychology, brain, and cognitive sciences.
I first studied international relations back in Japan at Nihon Daigaku, Nihon University, and then I became interested in going overseas, and then I chose Australia, and I have done 3 different university degrees in psychology, cognitive brain science, and computer science, and I have medical science degree too.
She has studied remote viewing extensively.
You see something, but you don't.
During her training in Hawaii, she proved her ability to produce accurate sketches and descriptions of verifiable targets under blind protocol. For example, she was tasked the Piazza San Marco in Venice. She was not told anything about the location. She was only given a set of numbers that represented the target. She drew the distinctive clock tower. She saw and sketched the unique architecture of the buildings surrounding the plaza. And she drew the waterfront, describing seafood vendors, markets, and shoppers. It was just one of the remarkable remote viewing sessions that she produced during her training.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
On another occasion, the target was Martin Luther King Jr. giving his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Under the blind tasking, she was given no hint about what the target could possibly be. Using only her subconscious awareness, she described an important man giving an impassioned speech. She said people were clapping their hands in praise, but some didn't agree with him. Another blind test. The target was a huge wildfire in Israel. Hitomi saw the billowing smoke and accurately sketched the location. In yet another target, the objective set out in the blind tasking was to identify and describe a man and his wife living in a home just outside of Seattle, Washington. Hitomi drew and described Seattle. She drew the home. She saw and sketched both the man and his wife. And she provided so many personal details about them that the man involved in the experiment called the work frightening. He verified many of the details in her session that no one could have possibly known.
It is real to me, and also it is more experiential to anyone who is interested, because it is something you can test it to yourself and prove it to yourself. You can hear lots of different, spiritual stories and people's experiences, but just as stories. But when you experience it and see things beyond time and space, it is real.
So, taskers decided to give Hitomi an extremely advanced and difficult target, the Higgs Boson experiment at the Super Collider.
Well, I'd have to ask you why you gave her the Higgs Boson target as a target. The complexity of the target is such that I would rank it as a difficult target.
Well, it's an interesting target. It's interesting and challenging on several levels because you have this huge machine. It's the biggest, most complex machine ever built by man. It's got that huge circular collider track. You've got the tunnels down below. You've got the huge round end cap that is a famous picture of all the complex machinery and wiring and electronics. So there are obvious things that you could see the remote viewer might perceive on a physical level. And then it goes to a level of energetics, to a subatomic level. And I wondered, how would a remote viewer perceive that? What would you see? How would your subconscious give it to you? How would you write that down in paper? What would you get?
July 2012. Hitomi was secluded in a home in the forest in the mountains above Honolulu. She was unaware of the developments at the facility in Switzerland.
More now on our top story, the discovery by scientists at the CERN laboratory near Geneva of a particle, the Higgs Boson, the so-called God particle. It's set to revolutionize our understanding of the universe by explaining why matter has substance.
She was given only a target ID, DCRV-GGFK. This sequence of letters was selected by random generators so that the viewer would know nothing about the nature of the target. Hitomi worked for more than 4 hours. When she was finished, she had produced more than 40 pages of sketches and descriptions.
So Hitomi came out with this session after working hours and hours and hours. She was really tired. She came out and could barely talk the next day. It took her a while to recover. So it takes incredible mental energy to do a target like this.
I think it drains the sugars from your brain. I think it really, the mental activity required is significant. I mean, you would feel drained, anything at that level, especially when you look at the words that she used to describe the sensations, the feelings, the imagery, the people, the whole force of nature kind of quality to the target. It's a significant target. I've seen things as good, but nothing so disciplined.
As remote viewers begin a session, they are trained to get very basic low-level data about a target. Following this protocol, Hitomi described this target as complex, hard, artificial, and dynamic. She saw colored shapes, but in the beginning she had no conscious realization of what they might be. She began to perceive something mechanical, something with a spinning motion. And she sensed people near some kind of machinery. As she worked, her perceptions widened, and she saw buildings, cars in a parking lot, and a tall cylinder-like structure near a large building. What she drew looks eerily similar to the grounds of the CERN facility.
We spread her papers out on a long table and started looking at them. And when I looked at her S3 site sketch, when I saw her site sketch, that's when I knew, hey, there's something really amazing going on here.
Focusing on the structure, she describes smart workers who have a good understanding of mechanics. She writes, "A lot of people working inside. Each section, sector, or department has its own specific purposes." She saw people in hard hats and uniforms or work clothes with tool belts and tools, rubber-soled shoes. She said they were checking cables, concerned with electronic devices, technical but mind-oriented people working to get things done, checking connections for experiments. She saw some kind of large circular mechanical device with a sense of spinning motion. She sensed it had to do with engineering and said people were monitoring it. Later in the session, she drew it again and said of the machine, "It's dangerous, too high voltage, too energetic."
Hitomi begins by sketching the physical layout of the collider. She gets the machines, she gets the tunnels, she gets the shapes. Then she goes on to the people working there, the technicians in the hard hats, the people doing some type of intense experimentation.
Hitomi's awareness is drawn back to the technicians. She said of this person, "He is proud of his job, dedicated, serious, focused, and tense. He wears a hard helmet has radio communications, strict instructions, rules, making sure to do it right. Then she begins to hone in on the collider itself. Her description of this image states, hard protective metals, energies inside, very active, and she writes, like an accelerator.
I said it accelerator because I saw a high speed of energy just going inside, and then so vibrational and so strong and powerful, and I felt like it's almost like a creation of some kind. And I saw metallic object, and I saw it is happening inside.
Inside the structure, she perceives a shaft of light. She describes energies like an explosion.
Well, I saw a cylinder-shaped object, and inside I saw such a high static vibrational energy inside, and I saw something collapsing, and I just wrote it down as a Big Bang.
Then she sees what she describes as a network of lights. It is interesting that she used colored pens to draw this image, coloring it red and blue. This is the image captured by scientists in Switzerland. It is the graphic they released showing evidence of what they believe to be the Higgs Boson particle.
If you look at Hitomi's complete session for the Higgs Boson, and if you just took those pages or cut and pasted different data points, you could lay out the factory line to the Higgs Boson. The place, the people, the equipment, the process, and some of the kind of like spectacular aspects of the actual colliding of particles.
Hitomi continued as information flowed through her subconscious. Of these graceful lines, she says, particle movement, cosmic, natural laws. This is another image used by physicists to illustrate the action of subatomic particles in the collider.
In my opinion, the session warrants a great deal of looking at from a teacher's perspective to see the type of data, the type of mindset, and then I'd actually want to know when you got this portion. I mean, regardless of what she explained in her paper or what she had written, I'd want to query her about reliving that specific sensation, and then backing that back to the skill and that she had learned from her instructors.
By this point in the session, Hitomi is in a hypnagogic state, near sleep, with theta waves dominating her brain functions. It is in this state that a remote viewer can bilocate to the target. She describes fractal-like images.
Once you get into a target at a certain level, you're not really blind anymore. You're not really blind to the nature of the target. I mean, you figure it out. So from that point on, there's a new possibility that exists in the data, and that is the viewer assembles it all, maybe with a twist that that might not be correct. Maybe the viewer would fill in data with like data, like type scientific data.
I came back to the real people and then started observing the people having a serious meeting, and I saw the scientist was talking about what he was doing, and then there are some people who are doubtful and skeptical, yet they're like, sweating and trying to understand hard, and was very serious.
She sees a man giving a presentation who she describes as the scientist, the director. Peter Higgs is the British physicist who headed the project. As the experiments in Switzerland unfolded, scientists held briefings to give updates.
A lot of the imagery and a lot of the pages didn't really make sense to me at first because I'm not a physicist. I don't really understand what goes on inside the Higgs Boson particle accelerator. So we set some of the pages aside, and it wasn't until after we talked to a physicist that the physicist explained how good a lot of this stuff was.
She did a remarkable job. I'd give her very high marks on what she did as far as her looking at the CERN facility. She got the information on not only the facility, the people there, but she got on the function, what it does, how it does, and toward the end, even how important that whole function is and how it related to her. Very good job.
And then later we started taking her sketches and we'd find images from the Higgs boson on the internet and we'd compare them and go, wow, that's what she saw, that's what she drew exactly. We hadn't understood that until we found the imagery later. So the feedback process took many months.
The work was scientific grade data produced, kind of like off one. It's like not like a scientist would say it, but like someone who understood it would say it, but didn't know the scientific terminology or the lexicon for explaining it. There was several areas of very complex remote viewing assumptions where she had actually collected data that was specific and related. And by the time you look at the entire session, which took how long to make? 4 or 5 hours worth of work. So she hit this like an academic. She really hit it at a different level.
Now, hours into the session, she is no longer aware of her surroundings in Hawaii. The reactions in the collider become her reality.
When I saw those particles or existences, I saw they are perfectly lined up, and each particle seems to be communicating with each other, although they have a distance between them. But there is such a perfection as in distance and ratios and space and time, and perfectly harmonic, like a harmonic resonance, and I almost felt like I was listening to an orchestra of music. It was so beautiful.
Although fluent in English, she is challenged to find words and phrases to express her perceptions.
What you get is you use your intent to query the database. And when you query the database, you get information back. And I would assume that in her mind, She was asking the question like, well, how do I relate to all this? What does all this mean? What's the big picture? Really, what's going on here and why is it significant?
When I saw the energetic movement of the beings that are existing there, they are drawing like a fractal coming over and over, interacting and expanding and growing and creating. Then I hit an idea that Fibonacci, that must be it. And then I start drawing that picture more like from my thought.
Almost like a collision inside her brain, she suddenly finds herself within the reaction.
At first, when I saw the images on my blackboard, I felt they are living organisms as they have consciousness in them. Therefore, at first, I just thought that can be a neural networks in the brain. Then I looked into it and I start seeing the beautiful strings of energies that are colorful, almost like a rainbows of shaft of energies that are interacting, intercommunicating with each other. And then as I observed them, they responded to me and they even know what I am looking at, and they seem to be communicating with each other at the same time. When I'm present at the target site as a remote viewer, they saw me. When I say they, those energies or consciousness existing at the target site.
So you are consciousness. You're not a body. And you as consciousness can query the databases that have to do with this virtual reality, or you can go to other reality frames, explore the larger consciousness system. It's all open to you because you're a part of that system. You're just a piece of it. And because you're consciousness, you communicate. That's what data is all about. That's an information exchange. What else would a consciousness system do but information exchange? It's an information system.
I was in there like a swimming. Say you are in a swimming pool or vast ocean and you're swimming and diving, more like I was in it and communicating with them. And I know they responded to me in some way.
Your ability to remote view is not limited by what you think, but how you think. So remote viewing is a process in which you by virtue of your intent, acquire information that you normally wouldn't have any access to. It's amazing, and it makes the point that viewer development is more important than viewer training.
Close your eyes. Look on blackboard and realizing that you're looking at the air at this target. Let it form up and tap your finger slowly and look.
When you develop the viewer themselves, and Hitomi had undergone almost constant, non-stop remote viewing exposure for about a year, because she had a student of David Morehouse, a student of ours. I mean, she had really thrown herself into it. So that target was extraordinary.
Hitomi begins by sketching the physical layout of the collider. She gets the machines, she gets the tunnels, she gets the shapes. Then she goes on to the people working there, the technicians in the hard hats, the people doing some type of intense experimentation. She describes the scientists, and she talks about the press conference that the scientists are holding afterwards. So she got all this on the physical level. And then after that, she delves into the subatomic, into the energetic level. So she goes deeper and deeper and into the more and more theoretical. And she starts describing these subatomic reactions and how they relate to nature. And then at some point, she takes it to consciousness. And her own consciousness starts interacting with the consciousness that's creating this particle. So there we get to a whole new level of remote viewing, to something that is just so remarkable. I guess it's why you would call it the God particle.
It was a beautiful experience, but also almost like I felt I have to bow down to something greater than who I am, and I felt I was in an inspirational state, so that I felt God.
Some scientists would have us believe that consciousness sprang up somehow from inert matter. I've seen science shows and they explain it like this. You have the primordial soup where you have minerals and elements, and somehow some spark of energy is applied. Lightning strikes or the sunlight, and these inert materials somehow attain life, single-celled, very simple organisms. And these simple organisms evolve into more complex organisms and somehow along the way achieve consciousness. Maybe that's backwards. Maybe it all begins with consciousness, and so-called matter and our reality is a construct of consciousness.
The hard problem to consciousness researchers is the problem of trying to discover how consciousness comes out of inorganic matter. You know, how do you develop consciousness? Yes, a biological system could develop, structure and can develop, beings that can do things. It develops trees and it develops all sorts of structure. That's what biology does. It builds structure. But the structure doesn't equate to consciousness. Consciousness is something different. Consciousness is the only thing that is real, is the only thing that's fundamental. Our reality, our physical universe, is a virtual reality. And when you have a virtual reality, somebody has to compute it. Well, a virtual reality is just a reality based on information. It's an informational based reality. And the larger consciousness system is the creator of this virtual reality that we call our physical reality.
I believe that consciousness is a dimension, and not just, when you have to use it to define itself, it should give you some hint or clue. You can't even imagine a dimension without consciousness, so how could consciousness not be a dimension itself?
At the end of her session, before being told what the target was, Hitomi records a final thought.
Suddenly my mind was still kept going with the target, and then my mind or the thought suddenly said they should study consciousness, they should study the power of mind, otherwise they'll never get there.
That Hitomi could be given a blind target and then so accurately describe the location, the people, and events sheds light on the remarkable potential of human consciousness. And in the end, the session describing the God particle brings us back to basic questions. What is the origin of our physical universe? How did matter come into being? And what part does consciousness play?